In a forgotten corner of an old city, tucked away behind a bustling bakery, lived a small, scruffy cat named Oliver. He wasn't like the other alley cats who prided themselves on their hunting prowess. Oliver was gentle, with eyes that held a quiet sadness. His days were spent watching the world go by, his stomach often empty, his heart even emptier. He had learned early on that the world was a harsh place, especially for a lone cat with no one to call family. One chilly autumn evening, huddled in a cardboard box for warmth, Oliver heard a faint rustling. Peeking out, he saw a tiny field mouse, shivering and nibbling desperately at a discarded crumb. This was Remy. Unlike the city rats Oliver was used to, Remy was small, timid, and clearly lost. Instinct told Oliver to pounce to finally secure a meal. But looking into Remy's terrified, beady eyes, he saw the same loneliness that echoed in his own heart. Instead of attacking, Oliver simply laid his head back on his paws and watched. Slowly, day by day, an unspoken truce formed. Remy, realizing Oliver wasn't a threat, grew bolder. He'd find a fallen berry or a piece of a dropped pastry and push it towards Oliver's box. It was never much, but to Oliver, it was everything. In return, Oliver would stand guard while Remy ate, his presence a silent warning to the more aggressive city rats and prowling tomcats. They became a strange, unlikely pair, a cat and a mouse against the world. They found a language all their own, a mix of soft chirps from Remy and Lo, gentle mews from Oliver. They shared stories without words. Oliver would gaze at the moon, and Remy knew he was thinking of a mother he barely remembered. Remy would twitch his nose towards the distant fields, and Oliver understood he was homesick for the tall grass and open skies. Their shared solitude blossomed into a deep, profound friendship. For the first time, neither of them felt truly alone. Winter arrived, blanketing the city in a thick layer of snow. Food became impossibly scarce. The bakery, their main source of scraps, reduced its waste. The cold was relentless, seeping into their makeshift shelter. Oliver grew thin, his fur no longer enough to keep out the biting frost. Remy, ever resourceful, would brave the snow-covered alleys, his tiny body almost disappearing in the drifts, always returning with something, even if it was just a frozen seed. One particularly harsh night, a blizzard raged. The wind howled through the alley, tearing at their box. Oliver was weak to even lift his head. He was fading. Remy, frantic with worry, knew he had to do something drastic. He remembered seeing a small basement window left slightly ajar at the back of a nearby house, a place where warm air and the smell of food sometimes escaped. It was dangerous, a human dwelling, but it was Oliver's only chance. With a determined squeak, Remy scurried off into the storm. He squeezed through the crack in the window and found himself in a warm, dry cellar. The air was filled with the scent of stored potatoes and firewood. In the corner, he saw it, a small bowl of cat food and a saucer of milk, left out for the homeowner's own pampered pet. It was a treasure trove. His heart pounding, Remy grabbed a single piece of kibble, a monumental effort for his small size. He dragged it back through the snow, a perilous journey that felt like crossing a vast frozen desert. He dropped the offering in front of Oliver, then immediately turned and went back. Again and again, he made the treacherous trip, his tiny paws numb, his body trembling with exhaustion. He ferried piece after piece of food, creating a small pile by Oliver's nose. Exhausted but triumphant, Remy nudged Oliver's face, chirping urgently. Oliver's eyes fluttered open. He saw the pile of food, and then looked at his tiny, snow-dusted friend, who was now shivering uncontrollably. With the last of his strength, Oliver nudged the food towards Remy, a gesture of pure, selfless love. But Remy refused, pushing it back. They had to survive this together. Slowly, Oliver began to eat. The food gave him a spark of strength, a flicker of warmth in the icy cold. He ate just enough to feel life returning to his limbs, then curled his body tightly around Remy, sharing his own meager warmth. Tucked against Oliver's soft fur, sheltered from the wind, Remy finally stopped shivering. They huddled together, two small souls against the fury of the storm, their bond the only thing keeping them alive. The blizzard passed, but the winter's hardship had taken its toll, especially on the tiny mouse. Remy grew weaker. His once bright eyes became dull, and his energetic scurrying slowed to a crawl. The trips for food became too much for him. Now it was Oliver's turn. With his strength slowly returning, he began to hunt, not for sport, but for survival, for Remy's survival. He'd catch small insects, or find scraps the bigger cats had overlooked, always bringing them back to their shared home. One evening, as the first signs of spring began to thaw the city, Oliver returned to the box to find Remy lying still. He was curled up, looking as if he were merely sleeping. Oliver nudged him gently, but Remy didn't stir. He nudged him again, a frantic mew escaping his throat. But his little friend was gone. The harshness of the world which they had fought against so bravely together had finally claimed him. A deep, aching grief settled over Oliver, heavier than any hunger or cold he had ever known. He lay beside Remy's tiny, still body for a long time, the alley suddenly feeling vast and terrifyingly empty again. The world had lost its color. He had lost his family. He carried Remy to a small patch of dirt beneath a struggling city tree, the only green space in their concrete world. He dug a small hole with his paws and gently laid his friend to rest. For days, Oliver didn't move from that spot. He didn't eat. He just sat, a silent, furry statue of sorrow, guarding his friend one last time. One afternoon, a young woman walking her dog noticed the forlorn cat. She had seen him before, always with a tiny mouse nearby. She saw the raw grief in his posture. Kneeling down, she spoke to him in a soft voice, offering a piece of chicken from her lunch. Oliver, lost in his despair, ignored it. But she was persistent. Day after day she returned, speaking to him, leaving food and simply sitting with him. Slowly, very slowly, the woman's kindness began to pierce through Oliver's grief. He saw in her eyes a gentleness he hadn't seen since he'd met Remy. One day, he took a tentative bite of the food she offered. Then, he allowed her to stroke his back. The touch was warm, and it didn't erase the pain, but it made it feel a little less lonely. Eventually, she brought a carrier. Oliver, remembering the warmth and safety he had shared with Remy, did not resist. He walked in. That day, Oliver left the alley for good. He went to a home filled with soft blankets, endless food, and gentle hands. He had a new family, but he never forgot. Even in his new, comfortable life, he would often sit by the window and gaze out, his eyes looking towards a distant, forgotten alley. He was no longer the sad, lonely cat he once was. He was a cat who had known the deepest sorrow, but also the most profound love. He was a cat who understood that friendship can be found in the most unlikely of places, and that even the smallest of creatures can leave the biggest mark on your heart. He carried the memory of Remy not as a burden of sadness, but as a quiet, warm light within him, a reminder of the tiny mouse who taught a lonely cat what it truly meant to love and be loved in return. Thanks for watching. If you were touched by this story, please consider liking the video and subscribing for more content. Every act of kindness, no matter how small, can change a life.